Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. In the name of God, the Beneficent, the Merciful. May God send blessings upon Muhammad and the family of Muhammad. Sallu ala Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad. Assalamu alayka ya Aba Abdullah. May peace be upon you, O Aba Abdullah, O Imam al-Hussein, who taught us to stand against oppression, who taught us to stand in the face of the aggressor, even if we are alone, even if we are outnumbered, even if they have all of the resources, all of the weaponry, all of the media machine, that we stand as people knowing that God is in control. And if the oppressors are doing this, it is for a limited time, and God is allowing them to do this. But they will face a rude awakening the way they are facing one now. I begin in the name of God, the most beneficent, the most merciful, who says in the Holy Quran in chapter 49, verse 13, that states, Ya ayyuhan nas, inna khalaqnakum min dhakarin wa untha, وجعلناكم شعوبا وقبائل لتعارفوا إن أكرمكم عند الله أتقاكم إن الله عليم خبير. O humanity, indeed we created you from a male and a female and made you into peoples and tribes so that you may get to know one another. Surely the most noble of you in the sight of God, Allah, is the most righteous among you. God is truly all-knowing, all-aware. And the same Lord who says to humanity in chapter 36, verse 60, أَلَمْ أَعْهَدْ إِلَيْكُمْ يَا بَنِي آدَمَ أَنْ لَا تَعْبُدُوا الشَّيْطَانَ إِنَّهُ لَكُمْ عَدُوٌّ مُبِينٌ. Did I not command you, O children of Adam, not to follow Satan, for he is truly your sworn enemy? I know everyone here and everyone watching may not be Muslim, but I begin with these verses to provide a backdrop to what I will speak about. That God created humanity to know one another, and the greatest of human beings is the one who obeys God the most, which would make them the most just, the most honest, the most kind, the most righteous. But God also warns to not obey the devil, because he has given human beings free will. He has given the human the capability to do great evil and even lie about it, to convince others the guilty are innocent and the innocent are guilty. I will discuss the following 4 points. The myth of Israel and who the real terrorists are. The American people and the lies and deception they have been fed regarding Israel. Number 3, if you have to lie as a Zionist to support your cause, what does that show? And 4, and finally, if you think Israel is going to bring back Jesus, may peace and blessings be upon his holy soul, you are right. But if you think Jesus, the blessed Son of the Virgin Mary, our beloved prophet and his holy mother, is going to be on the side of the Zionists and imperialists who are the modern day pharaohs, you are sadly mistaken. Point 1, the myth of Israel and who the real terrorists are. As Americans, the story is all too familiar. The very land we are standing on right now was stolen. In the same way Zionist militias went from village to village, town to town, and city to city, murdering Palestinians in cold blood. raping their women, killing their babies and children. A recent interview with elderly Israeli militiamen who were alive at the creation of the so-called State of Israel joked and laughed as he said, one of the militia members who was with him raped a 16-year-old girl. And excuse me for saying this. Another laughed as he said another Zionist Israeli militia member cut off the private parts of a Palestinian and put them in their mouth. And he was laughing. If you think this is graphic, disturbing, and hard to even hear, imagine experiencing it. Imagine being there. Imagine living through it. Imagine living through it for one day. Imagine living through it for 75 years. That is Palestine. When as kids in public schools in America, I myself went to the public schools in this country and went to university in this country. When as kids in public schools we learned about when American militias went through native land, village to village, and killed, exterminated, raped and pillaged Native Americans and sent them on the Trail of Tears. And these hypocrites have the audacity a few days ago to mark Indigenous Peoples Day when the Israelis continue to pillage the indigenous people of Palestine. This is the Nakba, in which Zionist militias went through Palestinian villages, towns and cities, exterminating, killing, raping, and pillaging. And these are not my claims. This is an internationally recognized event. I ask you all to read the book, The General's Son, by Miko Piled. Miko Piled, whose grandfather signed the Israeli Declaration of Independence, whose father was a general in the Israeli army, and who was himself a member of the Israeli Special Forces, who earned a red beret, and after the 1982 invasion into Lebanon, and keep it in your mind that a certain organization was formed after 1982, and they didn't always exist, changed into a medic, and buried his service pin in the dirt. After initially believing the Zionist narrative, he was brave enough and pure-hearted enough that he sought to understand the truth about this issue, and he did. He said at first that facing the truth about Israel was as difficult as having his teeth pulled out without anesthesia. But he stuck to what he knew was right and could not turn away from the truth. He realized that the whole myth that the creation of the state of Israel was a miracle was false. He says in 1947 to 1948, there were 40,000 well-trained, well-indoctrinated Zionist soldiers, his father being one of them, who stole almost the entirety of the Palestinian land. He has stated that Israel has been on a mission to destroy the Palestinian people for over 6 decades. Why would anyone not give solidarity to the Palestinian people? And very, very importantly, he has stated that every single Israeli city is a settlement. The creation of so-called Israel was a coordinated military conquest which used all means necessary to accomplish its objectives, no matter how evil. If someone is to claim we are biased because we are Palestinian, Lebanese, Arabs, because we are Christian or Muslim, then what about this man who is from one of the most prominent Zionist families, who said in a speech on October 1st, 2012, 11 years and 12 days ago, which, and I quote, "The Israeli army which I like to refer to as one of the best trained, best equipped, best fed terrorist organizations in the world. And yes, they have generals and they have nice uniforms, but their entire purpose is terrorism. And just as one example, because this theme about killing children seemed to have tickled the fancy of the Western media and their politicians. Just one example, and he's speaking in 2012. Almost 4 years ago today, so he was speaking about the attack on Gaza in 2008. As Israel began its attack, and I'm quoting him, as Israel began its attack on Gaza, September 27th, 2008, at 11:25 in the morning, what I refer to, this is him talking, as the most shameful day in the Jewish history, the most shameful day in the history of the Jewish people. Israel began carpet bombing Gaza, and on the first day of what would be a 21-day attack, they dropped 100 tons of bombs. He continues, a 1-ton bomb will decimate an entire city block. Gaza is one of the most densely populated places in the world. 800,000 children live in Gaza. 11:25 is exactly the time the morning school shift and the afternoon school shift change. So all the kids are in the streets. All the children are in the streets. And this is a continuation of the quote. That was the moment decided by the decision makers in Israel to begin the attack. This was the first day of a 21-day slaughter that had absolutely no justification. If that is not terrorism, I do not know what is. And this is how the state of Israel manages to control the different populations and somehow keep up this sweet, liberal kind of face to everything. And another article of Miko's from over 10 years ago, which shows that we must reframe the minds of people to not see what's happening the way the war machine wants people to think about it. They want the world to see a conflict that is only a few weeks old, when in actuality, this is a decades-long genocide by Zionists of Palestinians. This article of Miko Pilez is from December 20th, 2011, 5 days before Christmas. This is describing from the famous Tamimi family. So he says in this article, Mustafa Tamimi from Nabi Saleh, Bahjat Zalan and his son Ramadan from Gaza died on my 15th birthday, and just a few days after, Newt Gingrich declared them an invented people. They were murdered by the Israeli terrorist organization, the IDF, an organization that is supported and funded by the US. One Israeli terrorist shot the invented Tamimi in the head with a tear gas canister, and another Israeli terrorist fired a rock that murdered the invented Zalan and his boy Ramadan. Both terrorists were educated and trained by Israel and armed by the United States. The Israeli terrorists are not invented but quite real, and they are safe, protected by the apartheid regime that trained and sent them on their missions, and the Israeli court system will make sure they are never brought to justice. This is how Israel's well-oiled ethnic cleansing machine operates. The Zionist ethnic cleansing of Palestine is not a thing of the past, but an ongoing campaign that is executed by three arms of the state of Israel: the education system, a dedicated bureaucracy, and the security forces. The education system is dedicated to indoctrinating and producing soldiers and bureaucrats who will execute and enforce the ethnic cleansing. The bureaucracy is charged with making rules that make life unlivable for Palestinians. Rules that restrict Palestinian access to their lands and restrict their ability to travel freely to work and school. The same bureaucracy then demands that Palestinians pay for permits to be allowed to do these very basic things they were denied. The security forces, the most obvious of which is the IDF, are charged with enforcing the restrictions, fighting off the resistance, armed or peaceful, and terrorizing the invented people of Palestine. Since my father was a general and I served as a soldier, and the IDF terrorist organization, people often ask me, how is it that Israeli children who are raised in a Western-style democracy become such monsters once they are in uniform? The detailed answer can be found in my book, The General's Son, but the short answer is this: education. Racism requires a mindset that is fashioned by education. And I apologize for quoting extensively, but it is necessary to understand these 10-minute TikToks, 10-second TikToks and quick clips are very important. But we need to understand the history and what happened here, so we're able to defend against the media onslaught that is trying to confuse people. I continue. In order to rationalize and justify the ethnic cleansing to the Israeli education system portrays Palestinians as culturally inferior, violent, and bent on the annihilation of the Jews. Not Israel, but the Jews. And at the same time void of a true national identity. Palestinian national identity is but a figment of some anti-Semitic imagination. Since Israeli kids never meet Palestinians, what they learn in school, particularly in the school textbooks, is all that they know. Palestinians are portrayed as an existential threat through absurd comparisons like that of Yasser Arafat to Hitler, the Palestinians to Nazis, and the Palestinian resistance to Al-Qaeda. Although the right of defense and resistance over one's life, family, and property, including armed defense and resistance, is a divinely recognized right by all of the authentic religions and all authentic prophets, such as Abraham, Moses, and Jesus. Even the international community of varying faiths and creeds recognized in multiple United Nations resolutions. United Nations Resolution 45/130 from the year 1990 directly acknowledges the right of armed resistance generally, but this resolution is actually specifically and directly about the Palestinian resistance. It states, considering that the denial of the inalienable rights of the Palestinian people to self-determination, sovereignty, independence, and return to Palestine, and the brutal suppression by the Israeli forces of the heroic uprising, the Intifada, of the Palestinian people in the occupied territories, as well as the repeated Israeli aggression against the population of the region, constitute a serious threat to international peace and security. After mentioning multiple Security Council and General Assembly resolutions, it then states, and calls upon all states to implement fully and faithfully all the resolutions of the United Nations regarding the exercise of the right to self-determination and independence by peoples under colonial and foreign domination. It reaffirms the legitimacy of the struggle of peoples for independence, territorial integrity, national unity, and liberation from colonial domination, apartheid, and foreign occupation by all available means, including armed struggle. And it continues on. In America, many people, especially those supportive of Israel, mention their pride and Second Amendment rights. This is to have your own weapons legally as a matter to defend yourself in your home. And although some are unfortunately blindly following the imperialist government of the United States, they claim that the Second Amendment is to protect from the tyranny of the United States government. So I ask these people, if you support armed resistance to a home invasion, what about a land invasion? What about the ethnic cleansing of your people? What about the theft of your water, food, and resources? The expulsion of your family to live as refugees? And the renaming of your cities? The destruction of every aspect of your life? And this just shows the confusion and the irony of the understanding of the American people on the issue of Israel and Palestine. Sallu ala Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad.
Free, free Palestine! 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 Free, free Palestine!
Point number 2. The American people and the lies and deception. God says in chapter 49, verse 6 of the Holy Quran, O believers, if a known wicked person brings you news, investigate to avoid harming people out of ignorance and later regret what you have done. I ask the American people, how many times has this system, this government lied to you? Not about small things, but huge things that affect every aspect of our lives. They will hide the fact that in June of 1967, a naval research vessel called the USS Liberty was attacked by the Israelis, killing 34 American soldiers and injuring over 170 American troops to get American forces to join the war. They lied about Vietnam and the Gulf of Tonkin false flag, which pulled the United States into a war which caused the death of over 50,000 Americans. They lied about 9/11 and brand a conspiracy theorist anyone who simply questions the account given by the government, after it was exposed that they had a long history funding Osama bin Laden and the people they say allegedly carried out the attack. This so-called war on terror, which according to Brown University, has caused the deaths of over 940,000 people in the post-9/11 wars due to direct war violence. An estimated 3.6 to 3.8 million people have died indirectly in post-9/11 war zones. Over 1 million civilians in just Iraq have been killed as a result of the fighting. 38 million, the number of war refugees and displaced persons. The U.S. federal price tag, over $8 trillion. The U.S. government is conducting counterterror activities in 85 countries. At least 4 times as many active duty personnel and war veterans of post-9/11 conflicts have died of suicide rather than combat. I ask, who's a real American citizen? Someone who supports sons and daughters of America to go fight a war for Wall Street, or people who want American sons and daughters to stay here with their families and not fight a war for corporate greed and imperialism? They will make up the most disgusting, twisted lies to justify their military aggression and imperialist agendas. One of the most recent examples of this was when Colin Powell, the then Secretary of State, in 2003, stood before the world leaders holding a vial of an unknown substance, saying that Iraq had weapons of mass destruction, which again, you guessed it, was another lie. And the United States is still, to this moment, in Iraq. And this community, we joke about putting too much oil over your hummus so America doesn't come and invade it. Year after year, lie after lie, no matter the deadly consequences and impacts, this government and this system of imperialism displays that it is not a one-off lie, but an MO, an operating procedure, a playbook-like scheme to accomplish its objectives. In 1992, a girl came to testify before the American government to justify the first Gulf War, when she claimed that Iraqi soldiers were pulling babies out of incubators and letting them die on the cold floor. This again was proven to be a lie. And just as the current president of the United States has claimed that the resistance in Palestine has beheaded over 40 babies, it was again proven to be another lie. As the martyr Malcolm X has stated, You're not to be so blind with patriotism that you can't face reality. Wrong is wrong, no matter who does it or says it. So we must not be blindly listening to the news. Ask questions. Ask who is giving the paycheck to the pro-Israeli news anchors and stations. Ask who are the CEOs of these media institutions. What are their ties to the military-industrial complex who profits from war and suffering? What was their tie to the corporations who justify money for endless wars, but no money for us Americans, to have basic health insurance, to be able to afford medicine, to go to school without being in debt forever, to pay our bills with the ever-increasing cost of living, while the corporations and monopolies are making billions upon billions of dollars and their profits keep increasing. Free, free Palestine!
Free, free Palestine! Free, free Palestine! Free, free Palestine! Free, free Palestine! Free, free Palestine! And the occupation! 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 Palestine! Free, free Palestine! Free, free Palestine!
Point number 3. If you have to lie to convince people to support you, by definition, that makes you on the wrong side. Because if people knew the truth, they would oppose you. If Israel has to lie to convince people to support it, it is on the wrong side. If people knew the truth or weren't too afraid to share it, they would oppose Israel. The irony is, the Zionists say that because of what Hitler did to the Jewish people in the Holocaust, because they were treated like animals, because they were killed and deemed less than human, that is why the entire world should support them. And it is exact contradiction that when the Zionist Israeli defense minister says they are fighting human animals when they talk about Palestinians, nobody calls that Nazism. Nobody says that the Zionist Israelis are Nazis. No media sources are saying anything that we should support the Palestinian people because they are the victims. And finally, and I apologize for taking longer than expected, but these points need to be explained properly. We need to understand this in depth to be able to address this issue to our communities. I will end finally with this point. When the Zionists who support Israel in this country claim that the resistance axis is evil, namely led by the Islamic Republic of Iran, and that anyone who defends the just resistance that is led by the Islamic Republic is a terrorist or a terrorist sympathizer. I ask the American people if any of them know the first name of Imam al-Khomeini. The man named Ruh Allah, who was named after Jesus, who created the international solidarity and resistance against Israeli occupation, who when was exiled from Iran, when there was a secular democratic leader put in there who was removed by the United States through Operation Ajax, and in his place the Shah was placed. When this Imam Khomeini was put into France during Christmas, he went to his Christian neighbors and passed to them roses and passed to them gifts. And the American people have more in common with Imam al-Khomeini than they ever will have with the billionaire imperialists on Wall Street and on Capitol Hill. I end by quoting former Marine Mike Preisner, who says the ruling class The billionaires who profit from human suffering care only about expanding their wealth, controlling the world economy. Understand that their power lies only in their ability to convince us that war, oppression, and exploitation is in our interest. They understand that their wealth is dependent on their ability to convince the working class to die to control the market of another country. And convincing us to kill and die is based on their ability to make us think that we are somehow superior. And that the poor in this country have more in common with the Palestinian, Iraqi, Lebanese, and all oppressed people in the world than they will ever have with those standing with Israel. Thank you very much. I will welcome now our next speaker, my brother Tariq Bazzi. Please welcome him with a loud salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.